Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I want to talk to you guys about different types of sparring weapons that are available, for you guys to use, and different systems that are out there, for training specifically with sword and shield or sword and buckler. Okay. Now, one of the things I'm definitely going to recommend is, rather than try and reinvent the wheel in your backyard with your friends, join one of these organizations, like a HEMA club or the SCA, for example, where they've already kind of worked out the bugs. Okay, and like for example, if you go into the SCA, you decide if you want to fight with rattan or if you want to fight with steel blades, and then basically from there you decide where you want to start training. Okay, but somebody's people before you have already worked out all the bugs as far as you being able to spar relatively safely. Okay, which is a lot better than you trying to, kind of figure that out on your own, and potentially getting hurt along the way. Okay, so let's start with, like something like, let's say, Battle of the Nations, right, where they're using very real swords like this, and first of all, they're dressed in full plate. Okay, full 15th century armor. Now with this type of a sword, right, the compromise that they make is that they don't use thrusts, okay, because the thrust was basically designed to defeat plate armor, okay, and you can sneak something like, this doesn't give much, so this is something, that point is something that you can sneak into an armpit or through the helmet, through the eye slits in the visor. So thrusts are typically prohibited when they're using blunt swords like this. Okay? So that's one style of fighting. Okay? Now the other style of fighting is the rattan. I posted a couple of videos of myself fighting with rattan, and you'll notice that I'm wearing, basically I'm wearing a gambeson, and I have pieces of plates in certain parts of my body, but other parts of my body I don't have any plate. I'm just fighting with the gambeson, and what's going on there is, regardless of the fact that I may have some plate in a couple of areas, I'm calibrated for male armor. Okay, so regardless of what I look like, it's assumed that I'm fighting in male armor. If I'm wearing a gambeson and mail over it, and I'm wearing a Norman nasal helm. Okay, one of those nasal caps, and they were pretty light. Those nasal caps. They were basically designed, to protect against glancing blows. You don't want to get hit straight in the head, with a Type X sword if you're only wearing a Norman nasal cap. So when you see me fighting with rattan, that's what I'm calibrated for. I'm calibrated for male armor, and the swords that we're using, basically it's got a basket here to protect my hands, so I don't have to wear gauntlets with this. And gauntlets can be pretty expensive, so it's nice, to be able to use a basket. The basket acts as a counterweight. So this is basically, it adds weight to the back of the sword. So this is like a pummel, and that's what allows me to rotate the sword. And the sword moves in a very realistic manner. Okay, so it moves, it cuts in a very realistically, and also we do put padded tips on the end here that allows us to use thrusts, so we use thrusts and we use cuts. Okay, so basically the compromise here is that we're using a wooden sword. And fighting with wooden swords is actually very historical. I've seen numerous historical images. I actually just saw one recently the other day where basically two guys fighting with club and shield, and I also saw another one again where it's basically club and buckler. So it's very so training with wooden swords is very historical. It's probably a lot more historical than training with those plastic nylon swords that are somewhat popular today. So that's basically the SCA rattan combat. We're all calibrated for male. We are hitting at full power and full speed, and we're using wooden swords. Okay. Now let me talk to you guys a little bit about the cut and thrust. Okay. With cut and thrust, we are using with both cuts and thrusts. Okay. Now we don't use a sword like this that has no give. We use a sword like this that has a little bit of flex to it. Okay, and this allows us to also, so we're able to use both cuts and thrusts. Okay, so that's one of the nice things about the SCA cut and thrust. Now we're calibrated there for unarmored combat. Okay, so So even though we're actually not wearing, even though we're wearing, let's say, a fencing mask and a couple of pieces of armor on our body, like our elbows and knees, we're fighting. Basically we're soon to be doing unarmored combat. Okay. I like these. I really like the idea of using basket hilts. Now you might say that, well, a basket hilted sword and a shield is, really doesn't match up historically, and that's fine because neither does a fencing mask. And basically when you wear a fencing mask, you're basically saying, okay, basically this fencing mask is just here for my protection. If you hit me in the head, it's a good blow. Well, you can do the same thing with the basket hill. I can simply say that this basket hit here is for my hand protection, so I don't have to wear gauntlets, and I'll take any cut to the basket. Okay, so this is a really nice, easy way to to train. You get decent hand protection, and one of the things that I recommend is because a lot of these baskets do have some pretty big gaps here. Take a piece of leather and just wrap it around the basket, and tie it down, and that will give you some added protection, so nothing can get into your hand. Now, aside from the basket, you still need to have some type of a padded glove. I highly recommend it, especially like for your wrist area. You don't want to get hit on these small bones over here with the sword. Now, even though we're using relatively light cuts, occasionally, a more stiff blow may come in. So you definitely want to protect these small bones of your fingers, your wrist. You want to protect them with some type of padded glove. I actually have another one that has plastic on the back side here, and you can get them not too expensive. I think I saw one for about $20. If you get it, make sure it's got, because a lot of times they have that plastic just on the hands over here, but not the thumb. You definitely want to have that plastic over the thumb, because when it's in the basket, that's one of those areas that, especially this part over here, that part right there, that's exposed. You don't want to get that broken. Again, it's a thin bone. Like if you get hit here, it's probably not going to break. But if you get hit in the fingers or the hands, there's a better chance that you can break your bones there. So you want to have a basket. And you want to have some type of at least a padded glove on the inside, and preferably if you can get one that has some hard plastic to protect your hand even better. Okay? Now the other thing that you will need is you'll need some elbow and knee protection. Okay, let's start with the knees, and basically all you can do is just get one of these knee cups. I think they're like $30 each. Sometimes you can get them even cheaper. And what you do is you just get yourself a knee pad. Drill some holes into it. And then just use some fishing line, like 15 to 20 pound, test fishing line, and basically just stitch it into the, stitch this to the pad, and then what you do is you just slide this onto your leg. You take off your shoes and you slide this up, and this thing will then stay in position. You definitely want to protect your knees because basically the side of the knee, there's not a whole lot of muscle. There's no muscle there to really absorb the impact. That's just bone and cartilage. And you don't want to get hit on the side of the knee with a sword like this, okay, or even with this, okay. So it's definitely not with anything. You don't want to get hit hard on the side of the knee. So these things are pretty cheap. You buy this piece, stitch it, basically get some fishing line, sew this knee cup onto the knee pad, and you're set as far as knee protection goes. If you get hit further up the leg, yeah, it might hurt, but it'll just bruise and it'll go away in a couple of days. The other place is the elbow. Okay, with the elbow, you just get a smaller one like this, and the same deal. And they usually don't make different sizes for the different size pads for the elbows. Same deal. These things are like $10 for a pair. Get that. Get some fishing line. Okay, and then just stitch it. And then basically you just slide your hand up. And basically the two become together, and it won't really slide down your arm because of because that's elastic. So they do sell knee pads and elbow pads that sometimes have a piece of plastic there. That's not going to really be good enough because the plastic is usually here in the center. It doesn't protect the side of the knee or the elbow, and that's basically where you're going to get hit. So you need you need protection on the side over here. So yeah, so you definitely want to have something like this, and this thing's something like $15 or $20. Get that, stitch it into the elbow, and then you'll be set. So you need knees, you need elbows. You're going to need some type of a throat protection because the fencing mask, okay, these things are pretty thin, and even though these type of swords, give a little bit. I mean, if you get hit in the throat, I mean, it can, it can take you out. So you can either get something pretty cheap like these. These things cost like, again, $15, $20. And usually you have, like with this one, I had to put the leather straps in myself. Or you could just get some leather or an old belt, really, and make yourself basically a door collar that goes around here. It gives you that little extra protection. Okay, so this is a really good cheap option. So you can get, you can start, and of course, like I said, you need the fencing helm. What I did with this is I took a because you want some back of the head protection for the for sword and shield fighting, because we do use Winkelhaus. The Winkelhaus are the blows that basically wrap around. So you do need to protect the back of your head. And what I did is I just took a shoulder holder. This is basically the armor that would normally sit on my shoulders, and I just drilled a hole into the mask and I just tied it on there, and that protects the back of my head. But you can get creative. I mean, you can use you could probably go to a discount store and find like a cheap bowl or something, or basically anything that will attach to something hard that will attach to the back here, like a bread basket, and protect the back of your head. Okay. So as far as doing the cut and thrust, it's basically other than the sword itself, it's a pretty cheap investment. Basically, you got you got a fencing mask. You need some type of protection for the back of the head. You need some type of throat protection. And basically, you need knees and elbows, and you need a cup. Okay, so we're fighting. We're doing unarmored combat, so the blows are not that hard. The thrusts are not that hard either. But you wanna have this minimal armor, so that by not getting hurt, you'll be able to fight more, basically. So that's one of the reasons we want to avoid injury. Okay. And I also recommended, if you're using these type of a basket hilted sword, get some type of a padded glove, preferably one that has plastic on the outside. And I just saw one the other day for about $20. So they're out there. You just gotta do some searching. If you're not using a basket hilted sword, if you're using something open like this, you need a gauntlet. I mean, you need a hard gauntlet that wraps around, because if somebody hits you in the hands, you don't want to use something like this. You don't want to use a padded glove, because your hands can easily be broken through a padded glove. Basically, these are street hockey gloves. They're good for inside the basket, but they're not good for this type of a use, because sooner or later somebody's going to hit you a little harder than they're supposed to, and it's going to break your fingers. Okay. And as I was saying earlier, no matter what type of a weapon you're using, there's always going to be some compromise. And with this, basically, with this type of a sword, we can't use thrusts, and basically there's more mass on the blade over here, so that the cuts will hurt. If you're not using armor, okay, and you get hit someplace without armor, I mean this is gonna get hurt. I mean, if you get hit here on the forearm with this sword, I mean, it can break that bone, basically. If we're using a sword like this, this is gonna flex a little bit, so we can use those thrusts. As you can see, I got a rubber tip over there, so this is gonna flex a little bit. Now that flex does take away from the realism of the sword, because it flexes more than a sword should flex. So a lot of times when you cut, and if you're cutting into another sword, basically both swords can bend in an awkward way that's just not realistic. So there's a so even though this looks great, it's just not realistic. The fact that it's so tapered means that we can make a cut with decent body mechanics. And because there's just not that mass over here, it means that even if I put a little bit of body into behind my shots, I can control it such that I'm not actually breaking anybody's bones, because there's just not that much weight here. Whereas with this type of a sword, if I put any body behind this shot, you know, that's gonna break bones. And then with this type of a sword, you know, which is wooden, you know, we have the issue that it's basically it's a lot thicker than a blade, obviously. Okay, and that's really what I find to be the biggest difference. You know, like from here to here, because both these swords, I've actually balanced this almost exactly like this. The difference is that I find is in the blocks. Okay, because this sword is a little bit thicker. I'm able to block things a little bit easier, you know, to sword block things a little bit easier than I can with this sword. You know, especially a lot of times when I'm looking to, you know, if I got my shield here and I'm looking to come over like this, I can pick up some blocks over here a lot easier. Like with this sword, sometimes a few will slip through, whereas they would not slip through with that other sword. So no matter what type of a training weapon you're using, there's gonna be some compromises. I mean, that's just, you know, how training is, and you know, the same is true with even, let's say, modern day you know, gun training, you know, the training that police do, for example, or even the military. You know, I mean, they're either using real guns and shooting at fake people, right, you know, like steel targets or paper targets, or if they're using real people, they're using fake guns, like paintball guns, basically. So that's an issue today, and you know, what most of the time when police and military are doing is that they are, you know, they're using real guns, and they're training, they're shooting at fake targets that you know, fake people that don't shoot back. And you know, the interesting thing is, if you guys do any type of sparring, and I don't care if you're sparring with foam swords, I don't care if you're sparring with pool noodles, that's probably more realistic, right? Than the gun training that most police do, because they're, you know, basically they're never, you know, most of the training that they're doing, they're not getting shot back at. Whereas if you're using a foam sword, right, and you've got somebody trying to hit you back and you're trying to evade that, that, you know, in my opinion, that's actually more realistic. Okay? So a couple of things for you guys to think about. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, share it. If you're not a member of this channel, please subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.